welcome to Pod Up with Matthews and Warner from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. It's a Wednesday morning edition, and we got a good show lined up for you. We're going to kick it off here in just a second with Ryan Fowler from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, talking Alabama Crimson Tide football. Second portion of the program, we'll be joined by former player and former coach here at the University of Florida, Jimmy Ray Stevens, part of that Spurrier coaching staff. But first, let's go to the Titan MR hotline, and we're joined by Ryan Fowler up in Tuscaloosa. Good morning, Ryan. How are you, buddy?
Man, it's great to be on with you guys. We're getting a little closer to football, and we're a little bit, I guess, about 70 days out, and the anticipation, the energy begins to build around these college football towns throughout our country.
Yeah, Ryan, you've had like the longest going sports talk show there in the Tuscaloosa area, correct?
I have, and I've been doing it since 2000. Now, longest running, I guess, would be the better way to say it. And, you know, in radio business, it's kind of hard to stay on the air, but I've been able to do it. And we've covered Mike DeBose. We covered Coach Fran. We covered a semester for Coach Mike Price and Shula. And now we've got Nick Saban and one of the greatest dynasties we've ever seen in our sport.
No doubt about it. And speaking of Saban, you know, I was fortunate. I played my last year in the pros in 2006 with the Miami Dolphins. I thought I was retired, and I ended up going down there for the last 6 weeks of the season. You know, he wasn't a great – I guess you shouldn't say this, but he didn't have a lot of success at the National Football League. He's been very successful in college. What's your opinion on why he's been such a great college football coach?
Well, when I look at Nick Saban, he beats you by having better players than you do. He beats you in what I always say, National Signing Day, February. Now it's an early signing period that ends in December, and then another one there that first Wednesday in February. But I think he beats you by evaluation. He takes what he learned at the NFL and takes that evaluation phase and goes out and says, I can find the better players. And then I think what he does is he coaches them up on basic fundamentals. Shane, I think you would be a better expert to answer this question, but I think what he's doing in December and then another one, the basics. I don't think his system is world renowned when I'm talking about X's and O's and schemes and different things that he runs. I think what he does is he maximizes the fundamentals, and that's how he beats you. He tries to find a way just to execute those basic fundamentals of football. And, you know, he puts a lot on his players. I mean, you know, Ozzie Newsome told me that he said, you know, when you talk to players that come out of his system, it's like they have a PhD in football. Now, that's coming from one of the great general managers of the National Football League. And I know he's kind of stepped down into a role for the Baltimore Ravens. But, I mean, that's coming from a guy that understands talent, too. And he does the same type of evaluation phase that I think Nick Saban does.
Yeah, and I agree with you. He's a tremendous football coach, but again, he gets great players to come to University of Alabama. What do you think drives him to be so successful? Because I want to say he has a Mercedes dealership. It's one of the top dealerships in the country. Does that translate? I mean, does he have a lot going on with that dealership? Does he have a lot of input to make it run?
Yeah, I think his system is, let's say if he picked up and he went down and he decided to run a restaurant or any type of business, I think his system is something that can be applied to those things. It's just it's holding people accountable. It's a process that, you know, it's no pun intended, but I think you've got to go back and go back to guys like Don James, which he coached under and played under at Kent State. Warren Moon told me that that's the first time that he'd ever heard the word process. So it's part of the Don James coaching tree. It's maximize every one of these kids. And it kind of, you know, when you look at the NFL, if you look at the NFL, they look at a player and they say, well, he's got this much growth until his ceiling. Well, when you look at Nick Saban's system, he gets so much out of the players, their ceiling may already be reached at the next level. So as an evaluation, you look at it, you say, well, there's not that much room to grow because he's got everything that he possibly can out of that player. Now, that player may be able to spend more time in a film room and to be able to develop on that side of the game. But Nick Saban's system gets as much out of these players. And I see it. I see players arriving here, and I kind of go through a mental checklist in my mind. I'm sitting out there evaluating, and I'm looking, okay, this guy's going to be a good player. And I always miss it because I look at a player as when he comes in. Then you look at it 3-4 years later, and it's like it's just it blows my mind the amount of development, just not from the mental side, physical side, but everything intertwined. It's fun to watch him take players and develop them at next level.
We're speaking with Ryan Fowler. You can hear him up in Tuscaloosa, Alabama on 100.9 The Game. Ryan, let's talk about last year, just a brutal 11-2 season, right? Alabama goes.
Hey, it's a drought. It's a drought in Tuscaloosa. 2 years without a national title.
Exactly. Talk about, what you expect from the upcoming team. Mac Jones, I think, is going to be entrenched as the starter. Just talk a little bit about some of the players coming back and how you think Alabama will be this year.
Well, doing a 4-hour show in Tuscaloosa every single day, we talk about expectations. And I've asked the question, are the expectations fair? Is it the expectation to win a national title every single year? And Alabama fans tell me all the time, there's no doubt that that's the expectation. And when you don't reach that, it's kind of, I don't know if you want to say failure. That's a big word. But that's what it feels like. I mean, it feels like I'm hosting a funeral in Tuscaloosa now. I mean, we're up here, looking at, okay, well, what happens this year if he goes 3 years without winning a national title? And I know that sounds funny to other fan bases, but that's the expectation level here. That's what Nick Saban has built. If he doesn't win a national title, it's been a little bit of a, down year. This year is going to have to find a way to get all the defensive side of just on the same page. You look at college football, and I know it's changed. When you look at scoring points, that's, it's a fun brand of football. A lot of people like to see 40 and 50 points. Nick Saban has built his team on defensive side of the football. And when you see so much confusion on that side of the ball, you got to back up a couple of minutes and you think about, well, what can, allow that to change a little bit? And it's going to have to come from the top. It's going to have to come from Nick Saban. It's going to have to come from the defensive coordinator. I don't have that many questions on the offensive side of the football. I think Mac Jones is a good enough player at that quarterback position, especially with all the weapons. He's going to have one of the best offensive lines of the country. He's going to have a great backfield to rely on. And you've got some quality wide receivers. Devontae Smith was able to prove that he was more than just a 2nd and 26 quarterback. But you look at Jalen Waddle, you combine that with a guy that is John Mechie that the world will probably know, 3 or 4 weeks into the season, you'll go, okay, now I know, because it's just another 5-star sitting there waiting to take over more responsibility in that wide receiver room. I don't have any questions around the offensive side of the football. My questions are on the defense. Who's going to be the alpha dog? Who's going to take charge of that defense? Who's going to develop some of that Alabama mentality to get this team back? I have questions of who's going to do that. Is it Dylan Moses? Is it another player that's going to develop in the off season? That's why I think this lack of 15 practices in the spring was, very impactful here in Tuscaloosa, because they were trying to reestablish that level of dominance on that other side of the football. Offense, no questions. Defense, I have quite a few.
And that's interesting hearing you say that, because that's kind of been Alabama's problem the last few years, is playing good defense, when early in Saban's career, that's what they relied on. And him being a defensive-minded head coach, they're struggling on his side of the ball. Were you surprised that Tua's little brother transferred?
Well, I think it's the first victim of the lack of spring practice. Let's say we have 15 practices and Talia is able to come out and say, you know what, man, I got a chance to win this job. I got a chance to beat Mac Jones out. I got a chance to be a real, competitor at that number 1 spot. If you don't have, which we didn't have the 15 days, there's just a lot of unknowns. You don't know where you really set up in that depth chart. So if you have any doubt, I think what you're doing is trying to say, hey, let's go find an opportunity that's more secure. And I think that's what he did. I was a little bit shocked, but under the circumstances and no, 15 days of spring practice, maybe not.
When you look at we'll get back to Alabama. Let's talk SEC West. Obviously, LSU had a tremendous team last year, a lot of talent. Joe Burrow, maybe the greatest season we've ever seen out of a college quarterback. Where do you see – I think everybody has Alabama pretty much penciled in to go to Atlanta. Who do you see giving them the most fits? Is it A&M, Auburn, or LSU?
You know, I look at Jimbo Fisher and I think, okay, the investment, but I'm not able to be persuaded by money. And I think that's what Texas A&M has done to try to go out and, create, this high revenue program that, and I just don't know if I buy Texas A&M. You look at Auburn, but I'm not there either. I didn't see enough in, Bo Nix to kind of get me to maybe where I needed to be with them. Defensively, they lost a ton. Offensive line, they lost a ton. But then we look at LSU, they lost, 15, 16 starters. But I think Coach O has lifted that program, and we're going to find out what that pressure is like this year. I still have to think it's got to go between Alabama and LSU. That trip to Tiger Stadium is going to be awfully important for Alabama. And depending on the capacity of the crowd of what that place will look like. I mean, you take that place down 50%, that's a different home field advantage that they may or may not have. I think it still runs through Baton Rouge and Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, another intriguing part of the SEC West with the addition of Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin, former Alabama assistant. Your thoughts on those two guys joining the conference?
Well, Lane Kiffin is a brilliant play caller. I think it's going to be fun to watch. He's not going to have the players this year, but I watched him take a backup quarterback and develop him into things that he could do, and maximize the strengths, disguise the weaknesses, and I think that's what he's going to do with Plumlee at Ole Miss. I just think Lane Kiffin does his best work for 3.5 hours on Saturday. When you look at Mike Leach, I think they're going to be a player in the SEC West. I don't know. It's not going to be this year, but I think his system is attractive enough that Mike Leach is going to build something that Mississippi State fans are going to be proud of. The win total is not the same as it is here in Tuscaloosa, but it doesn't have to be. I think they're just looking for consistency, just like Dan Mullen was able to do there in Starkville. I think that's what they're looking, and I like Mike Leach as a coach. I think he's, it's a tough division, all of college football, and I think he'll be fine there. I think he'll win the total of games that they're looking for.
When you look at the SEC East, most people think it's Georgia, Florida to play pretty much Alabama in Atlanta. Do you think the Gators have taken that step to get closer to beating Georgia under Dan Mullen?
I think so. And watching Dan Mullen work at Mississippi State is, just a system of taking, what he's able to get and building in a program that's respectable. I do like the Gators. I'm not a huge fan of Kirby Smart. I don't like the way that he manages the game. And, we're going to find out if he's truly, this big-time coach. We know he's a big-time recruiter, but is he a big-time coach? I think that's still to be determined.
Yeah, and early in the year, hopefully we start the season on time, the Bulldogs of Georgia traveled to Tuscaloosa. I can't remember the last time they played there. How excited are the people in Tuscaloosa having Georgia come to campus?
Oh, it's going to be huge. It's going to be a great atmosphere. It's going to be one of the best in college football. And hopefully the crowds, the capacity is going to be able to allow to get inside Bryant-Denny Stadium, because that's a different game. If the fan participation is not there. So hopefully it's 100% capacity, and that atmosphere will be what we love in college football. I think that is a huge, gigantic game here in T-Town.
So Ryan, your thoughts? Obviously, we're all wondering if we're going to start on time. Do you think we start college football on time this year?
I do. I just feel like that we're going to get there. Sports is such a unifier, and I think this is one of those. Our country needs it right now. I mean, we need it more than ever. And I think we get there. I feel like that we will get there. I don't know what the fan participation will look like, but I think we play the game. I would be shocked at this point, 70 days out, we don't get college football.
Alabama's supposed to kick the season off against USC, correct?
It is Arlington, Texas, USC, and that's a pretty explosive offense. And we'll find out early on, if this defense is going to be something that develops into something that's respectable here in T-Town. You'll find out early if this defense has truly got their mojo back.
Last thing for you, Ryan, and we really do appreciate you joining us. I don't know if you heard, but they banished the Gator Bait chant here last week. And I know a couple of years ago, they got rid of playing Dixieland Delight there at Bryant-Denny Stadium, but then they brought it back. I don't know why they banned it or anything like that, but are there any talks about banning any type cheers or anything up there in Alabama?
No, not yet. I mean, it may happen very, very soon. And, I got to say this. When I look at Gator Bait, now this is me personally, I didn't know the racial undertones of that. It's something that, and when I backed up a little bit, I mean, listen, I can understand where that could be a problem, but I don't know if that was really meant to be derogatory. That's just the way I look at it. And, you got to look at it. And I know we're in a different time and everybody wants to, throw things, but I didn't look at that as a bad thing in college football. And I guess we're learning as we go. But when you look at Alabama right now, there's no discussions, but that may change the next couple of hours. Who knows?
Well, Ryan, before we let you go, and hopefully we can have you on before the season starts, but
sure, absolutely.
Right today, who is Ryan Fowler picking to play in Atlanta?
I think it's Alabama, Florida. And I'm not saying that just because I'm on in Gainesville. I just don't believe in Kirby Smart. I just don't think he's an in-game coach. I've watched him make a lot of crucial mistakes. I think Florida takes that next step and is that program that we expect under the Gators. But some of that's a little bit biased because I'm just not a big Kirby Smart guy.
Well, let everyone know how they can follow you on Twitter, how they can listen to your show.
Absolutely. Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa, and you can connect with me at Ryan C. Fowler on the Twitter account.
Well, Ryan, be safe up there, my man. We appreciate you joining the show, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, thank you guys so much, man. College football is right around the corner. Thank you again.
Yes, sir. That's Ryan Fowler. Join us on the Titan MR hotline at Center State Bank. We put business first. We are the largest community bank in the state of Florida. Center State has 5 convenient Alachua County locations to serve you better. Come in and experience the Center State difference. To learn more, visit centerstatebank.com. Center State Bank, member FDIC. We're going to take our first time out of the program. When we come back, we're going to be joined by former Gator and former Gator coach, Jimmy Ray Stevens. You're watching and listening to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
Time out! Time out! Hey! Time out! Time out! Time out! There we go. Good.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills.
Let's give them something to cheer for now.
Our gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. The Best Restoration, Masters of Disasters. Pound Hurt, your preferred personal injury attorneys. Peachland Dental, Gator fans' first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Celebration Point Town Center, The Digital Mortgage Guy, Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Center State Bank, Gator Bait Media, Davis Gainesville Chevrolet, Miapa Latin Cafe, Gators Dockside, Okido America Martial Arts and After School,
Doreen Weeby Realtor, Caldwell Banker MM Parish,
Radware, Wrap Spot,
and Style Cuts.
If you are interested in promoting your business on this show, you can visit our website, potupwithshane.com, and click on the advertise button or call Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
He's looking, still looking. He's going for the end zone. He's got a touchdown!
Welcome back to Pod Up with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. It's a Wednesday edition. We want to thank Ryan Fowler from up in Tuscaloosa for joining us. Now we're going to go back to the Titan MR hotline, and we're joined by former Gator player and Gator coach, Jimmy Ray Stevens. Good morning, Jimmy. How are you?
Doing great. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Coach, what I like to do with all the former players and coaches when they come on my show, we go back to their days of their high school days. And obviously you were a Gator. I want to say you played at Eustis High School. Did you always want to be a Gator? Or was there a possibility of you playing elsewhere?
No, actually, I always wanted to be a Gator. When I was young, I used to watch the Doug Dickey show every Sunday and watch the Super Sophomores, with John Reeves and Carlos Alvarez and Tommy Durrance. And we'd go out on the fields, the field of dreams, and go out there and throw and catch and run all the plays we saw on TV, So I've kind of always been a Gator. Plus, we had two other guys that I graduated with that we all three signed at the University of Florida together and, played for 3 years, each of us. And so when you can go with your friends like that, that even makes it more special.
Yeah, Coach, I read somewhere, you obviously played for Doug Dickey, but I read somewhere where you played linebacker, center, and tight end, all three positions?
Yeah, that's correct. I started at all three different positions in 3 seasons.
That's pretty unique. I mean, you played linebacker one year, and then turn around and play center, and then play tight end. Was there a reason why that all happened?
Well, my sophomore year, I think our center was on the smallest side, and I was pretty small myself. But anyhow, he wanted to try me. I'd never snapped the ball before in my life, and he wanted to try me at center to get a little bit bigger guy, and ended up winning the starting job and making all second team All SEC my sophomore year. And then the second time we had two first All-Americans at linebacker with Ralph Ortega and Glenn Cameron.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those guys went first round into the NFL draft, and they needed somebody to play linebacker, and Doug Knotts, the defensive coordinator at the time, thought that I could do so. And so he moved me over there, and I ended up starting at inside linebacker until about mid-season. I had an injury. A guy come flying over the top of the pile leg with me. So I was out until the bowl game. And then my senior year, I don't remember how that happened, but I got moved over to tight end and ended up starting there and making second team All SEC at that position.
That's crazy. So how big were you when you played center?
I was 228.
Oh, Lordy.
Yeah. That's amazing. Our biggest guy back in the day was about 275, and in the on the whole team really, but in the offensive line. And shoot, nowadays you can't even play at 275.
No, not at all. So, Coach, talk a little bit about some of the games that were most memorable to you when you were here playing as a Gator.
As a player?
As a player, yes, sir.
Oh, boy. Well, I remember as a center playing against Alabama, and they just rotated 3 nose guards in all throughout the game. And I thought that was pretty unique to have to go against 3 different guys, with 3 different styles of play. Nothing special as a center, of course. Linebacker, nothing special there really, other than missing practice all week and then being able to go out and play against LSU, against A.J. Dewey and those guys. Then my senior year, one thing that stands out more than anything is catching a touchdown pass to beat LSU on my birthday. That was pretty cool.
That had to be pretty cool when here you are catching a touchdown pass. The previous couple of years you were playing linebacker and center. That just blows my mind. When you look back at your playing career, I ask all the former players who they enjoyed playing against the most, which rivalry game. Was it Florida State, Georgia? Which team did you enjoy the most playing against?
Well, back when I was playing, it was never really close against FSU. We beat them pretty handily every year. But my senior year in 1976, that was Bobby Bowden's first year at FSU. Things got a lot closer that year, and from that point on. I think the final score was we beat them 32 to 28 or something like that. So that wasn't that big of a rivalry, but Georgia, I would say, was probably always the biggest rivalry and the team that I liked playing against. My senior year, we had an opportunity to win the SEC for the first time in history, and we were up, I don't know exactly, 26 to 14 or something like that at halftime, and ended up losing the game 41 to 26, I believe. But I played tight end in that game, and playing against Dirk Russell's defense was something that really stood out in my mind. And actually, I was the offensive player of the game. And so that one stands out in my mind. It was a lot of fun.
We're speaking with Jimmy Ray Stevens on the Titan MR hotline. Coach, you were a long-time high school coach before you got into the college ranks. Talk a little bit about what got you into high school coaching, and we're going to talk about your state championship team here in a minute, but what got you into coaching high school ball?
Well, actually, I got my start coaching at the college level at the University of Florida.
Oh, okay.
I was drafted, of course, by the Steelers, and went up there, broke my foot in training camp, and spent the year on injured reserve. And, I asked the coaches, I can't do anything. I'm just here. Can I go back to the University of Florida and kind of volunteer as a coach and get started doing that? And then I had to fly back to Pittsburgh every 4 weeks to see the doctor. So I was a volunteer coach that first year. Well, the second year I go back to Pittsburgh, and they released me the very first day before I ever put a pad on because they didn't want to take a chance on that foot again. So I came back, and then I became what was called at that time a part-time coach at the University of Florida with Doug Dickey. So my first 2 years was there at Florida as assistant line coach with Kim Belton. And he had a big influence on me in terms of foundation of offensive line play. And then Coach Dickey got fired. So you know how it is. We all got fired. And I tried to go with the NFL one more time. So I signed a free agent contract with the Philadelphia Eagles. Go to training camp, go all the way through training camp to next to the last cut. I get cut, come back to Gainesville, and it's like, well, what do I do now? So Tom Comer, who was my high school coach, was the head coach at Ocala Vanguard. And so I called him up and I said, hey, coach, man, I just got cut from training camp. I'm looking for a job. He says, come on down. You teach biology. Well, I'd never done that before. But that's how I got started. And coached for 7 years as an assistant in high school at 3 or 4 different schools. And then decided to be a head coach for the first time. And I went down to Williston High School, became a head coach for the first time in my career, and then went on to Fort Walton Beach. And after that, of course, Coach Spurrier offered me the job to come back to Florida. So he was actually the 4th head coach that I worked for at the University of Florida. In 1984, I was there as a GA, as a graduate assistant with Charlie Pell. And then halfway through the season, of course, he had to resign with probation, and Galen Hall took over as the head coach. So it's been kind of a unique situation to be able to work for 4 head coaches at my alma mater.
That is. I didn't realize all of that. Let's talk about your state championship team there at Fort Walton Beach with old Danny playing quarterback. What was it like coaching Danny Werfel in high school?
Well, it's a coach's dream, to have somebody that's that intelligent and that physically talented, but not only physically talented, and very talented mentally and emotionally, which I think is just as important as the physical part, really, when it comes to football. And he was just a natural leader. He was very humble. We're still very close friends today. And he's he's definitely the most fun player that I've ever coached. And, whenever you got a quarterback like that, you can do a lot more things in high school football that you normally couldn't do, if you didn't have that kind of guy.
Well, I was his host on his visit coming here, and I want to say, did it come down between Florida and Alabama, if I'm not mistaken? Did you have a big role? Did he come to you, Coach, and say, where do you think I should go play?
You know what? When I first met Danny, I was in a PE class, and I said, who's the quarterback here? I want to see him do a few things, and so I can decide what kind of offense. Well, he had an FSU cap on, and his sister went to FSU. So, I always rib him and kid him about that. But when it came right down to it, his senior year, going through the recruiting process, it was Florida, FSU, and Alabama. And we had a big Alabama contingent on our faculty there at Fort Walton Beach, and they really wanted him to go there. And then, of course, you have FSU people wanted him to go there, and Gainesville's the farthest away from up here in Panhandle. But I told him, I had, I think, a big influence on it, because I told him, I said, I'll never put pressure on you, but I just want to advise you on the things that I know. And I said, if you go to Alabama, I don't see you, taking the snap, turning around, handing off 75 or 80% of the time. And I said, you got Coach Spurrier, who's the best quarterback coach in the country, down there at the University of Florida, and he's going to throw it around the park. I said, that's the place that you need to be. And, we took him down to Gator Growl and one thing or another, but he just really liked it down there. And, playing that state championship game at Florida Field was pretty unique as well. That was his future home. And, so the rest is history. All things worked out.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So Danny's here a couple years. I want to say it was after my senior year. Rich McGeorge, maybe he was here one more year, but he was the offensive line coach. He takes a job with the Dolphins. You get a call from Coach Spurrier. Tell us how that went. He wanted to hire you as the offensive line coach.
Well, that was a long process. We've known each other for a long time, both being former Gator players, and we would see each other at, reunions, the Golden Era reunion down in Crystal River, et cetera, et cetera. And I'd always give him a resume every year back when he was at Duke and just let him know what I was doing, because that's where I started. See, he and I were on the same staff with Doug Dickey in 1978.
Okay.
And and so we knew each other, but not that well. And I'd give him a resume every year. That was my dream, my goal, to go back to the University of Florida, my alma mater, to be able to coach football there. And quite frankly, after Danny went up there and spent a year there, and I was still up here at Fort Walton Beach coaching, I'd given up on it. I said, you know what? I said, maybe the good Lord just wants me to be a high school coach, and I'm not meant to go back to college. Well, all of a sudden in March 10th, actually, I remember the date, Coach Spurrier calls and said, hey, Jimmy Ray, this is Coach Steve. He says, you've been wanting to come back and be a Gator coach. Are you ready to come? I said, yeah, Coach, you want me there tomorrow? And, so that's how that all took place.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So you're here, I think, 9 years with Coach Spurrier. Y'all win a national title in 96, play for it in 95. You have a bunch of really good players on the O-line that you coached in your tenure here, Jimmy Ray. Just talk a little bit about, because I've had a bunch of former linemen on my show. There's a unique bond between linemen. And I don't know if it's because it's 5 of them. Well, it's really more than that, but you got a big room, bunch of guys in there. They don't get a whole lot of limelight. The only time they get their name in the paper is when they give up a sack. Just talk about the bond that linemen have.
Well, it's a hard thing to describe. The guys really develop a tight camaraderie in there because of that, because they don't get the allocates that other players do, but their sole purpose is to protect other players, the quarterback, the running backs, and they're the guys that have to provide the muscle up front. And David Cutcliffe said it as good as anybody I've ever heard. He made the comment and he says, I love offensive linemen. They're the greatest humans on this planet. And, they're usually very, very humble. They're very hard workers. And they're the kind of guys you like to coach. Most of them are pretty intelligent, not all of them, but most of them are. But, yeah, it's a pretty special deal to be able to coach the most players really on the whole team. You know, when you're the offensive line coach, you got 5 guys that you're coaching. No other position has that many.
Who would you say is the best offensive lineman that you coached while you were here at Florida?
Wow, that's a tough one, Shane. There was a lot of them, and I know I'm going to forget some names. But the first one that comes to my mind, you know, the 9 years that I was there, we were fortunate enough to have 4 players or 4 years win the Jacob Blocking Trophy, which is the best blocker in the Southeastern Conference. And, you know, Jason Odom is the first guy that comes to mind. A very sound player, you know, all around. Run block, pass block. Donnie Young, quite a character. I love coaching Donnie. He was one of the Jacob Blocking Trophy winners. Jeff Mitchell was an All-American that played in the NFL for a while. Mike Pearson, Mo Collins, Kenyatta Walker. It just goes on, you know. Zach Pillar. There's so many good ones. I think there was 15 guys that played in the NFL for a pretty good period of time. Most of them, you know, first round guys that, you know, played in the NFL for a long time. So I was very blessed and fortunate. And as we all know, you got to have good players to be a good coach.
That is very true. So Jimmy Ray, once Coach Spurrier left the University of Florida, you coached a couple of different places, Tennessee, Middle Tennessee State, some other colleges. You know, I wish someone would sometimes do a documentary or some type of show on Coach Spurrier because he's so unique, the way he coaches, the way he teaches, the way he runs meetings, the way he runs practices. Talk a little bit about what it was like going from Coach Spurrier, and I know you had coached from other head coaches, but going to Tennessee and Middle Tennessee State, just the differences that the head coaches were compared to Coach Spurrier.
Well, you know, Coach Spurrier, I was with him longer than any other head coach. I was there with him for 9 years. And he's had the biggest influence on me as a coach and a person during that time. And the biggest thing about Coach Spurrier is he keeps things light. He's very, very positive in his attitude. And, you know, we as players and coaches can control 2 things, basically, you know, and that is your attitude and your effort. And everybody always played with great effort for Coach Spurrier because he had a good attitude and it filtered right down through his assistants, right down into his team. And I've always felt like players, you know, take on the personality of the head coach. And, you know, so it was really, really cool playing for Coach, you know. And the thing is, he does things his way, but very efficient. And, you know, during the off season, you kill yourself during the season. You know, you got 14, 15-hour days, you know, 7 days a week for 6 months, you know. But during the off season, Coach would say, hey, get your work done, what you need to do, and then get out of the office here. Go charge your battery, recharge, you know, go play golf, do something. And Coach Fulmer, when I went to Tennessee, was just the opposite. You know, he was kind of uptight and a little paranoid, I guess you could say, but I love Coach Fulmer. Now, he was a good guy. I really liked him. You know, he knew offensive line play because that's what he coached. And he spent an awful lot of time in my offensive line meeting room. But there was a big difference between off-season playing golf and off-season sitting in the office watching the walls crack, you know. So there was a difference there. And then, you know, Middle Tennessee, Stockstill was kind of a combination of both because Stock had worked with Coach Spurrier at South Carolina. So he had a little bit of that feel as well.
We're speaking with Jimmy Ray Stevens on the Titan MR hotline. A few more minutes with Coach. It had to be cool. Your son, Chris Stevens, signed with the Gators, and I want to say he ended up having to transfer, but that had to be pretty cool for him to sign it at the school that you were coaching at and that you played at.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, he played there at View Holtz High School in Gainesville, and I was really happy when Coach Spurrier offered him a scholarship. And you know, of course, when he signed that year, my son, Rex Grossman, and Brock Berlin, all three signed the same year. And so Rex ended up winning the job and doing all the playing. So Brock transfers to Miami. My son transfers to North Carolina and ended up playing up there. And, you know, graduated from there and met his wife there and got his master's degree. And he's now a preacher up there in Raleigh, North Carolina. So that apple fell down a long ways from the tree.
Yeah, no doubt. Coach, I wanted to ask you, what did you guys learn as a staff after the debacle? I guess I could call it debacle, 95 against Nebraska, how they manhandled us on both sides of the ball. What do you think y'all learned as a coaching staff getting ready for the 96 season?
Wow. A lot of things, I think, you know, but the biggest thing that stands out in my mind, you know, Tom Osborne won a minimum of 11 games. For 23 years, I believe it was, something like that. But anyhow, he said that was the best football team he's ever had. And that says a lot because Nebraska was really good back through the years. And the thing that stood out to me more than anything, even watching them a little bit in pregame warmups, is the physicality of their players. The offensive line, the defensive line, those guys were very, very, very physical. And, you know, of course, their strength coach, Boyd Epley, was the first strength coach ever hired by colleges, you know, as a full-time position. And they were way ahead of most people when it comes to strength back in the day. But then they learned something from other people about speed. And so they obviously started recruiting Florida and other states to try to get more speed. But that's the thing that stood out to me, is the physicality and how more physical we had to be as a football team.
Yeah. At Celebration Point's where the Gators come to celebrate, with premium brands like Bass Pro Shop, Tommy Hilfiger Hotel Indigo, Nike, Medici's, Regal Cinemas, and coming soon, the HBC's new restaurants, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, and Visor's Rooftop Bar. We will see you at Celebration Point where the Gators come to celebrate. You going to come hang out at the Visor's Rooftop Bar, Coach?
I'll come out if you will.
Yeah, I'll definitely be there. Last thing for you, Coach. Y'all got an opportunity last spring, I believe it was last spring, to coach the Orlando Apollos. I know that the season didn't turn out how y'all expected it to because the team league had to fold. But how was it fun coaching with Coach Spurrier again? You know, really not a whole lot of pressure on you, not having to recruit. What was it like coaching the Apollos?
Well, you know, I had a pretty good gig going up here at Walton High School as athletic director and head football coach. And I was looking at 3 years maybe before retiring. And then whenever he presented the idea to me, I said, this is almost too good to be true. You know, if you go and your job is really 4 to 5 months out of the year, and then you can live your life the rest of the year. And I would be making more money than I was making up here, and having the opportunity to coach with Coach Spurrier again, you know, like-mindedness, and with other assistant coaches, Bob Sanders, Jim Collins, you know, some of those guys, Willie Jackson that played for us, and Lido played for us. So it was a real Gator flavor, you know. So it was really too hard, or, you know, you couldn't pass it up. And so we go down, and it was a great experience from the football aspect. Just the ownership and the money obviously went bad and made some poor decisions. And unfortunately for coaches and players, the league did fold and left a sour taste in your mouth. But at the same time, you know, we won the league championship. That was kind of a goal that we had. And, you know, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work, but it was a lot of fun coaching athletes that are that caliber. And it's a memory, you know, like Coach says, memories of a lifetime, man. And that's something we'll never forget.
Yeah. Coach, I want to get your thoughts, being a former player, former coach here, what you think about what Dan Mullen has done in his 2 years here, winning 21 games, 2 major bowl wins, kind of getting the program back to where it was when you guys were coaching here. Your thoughts?
I like Coach Mullen a lot. You know, he's been successful everywhere he's been for the most part, and huge part of the 2 national championships whenever Urban was here. You know, and so he's he's got a good feel for the Gator Nation and what that's all about. And you got great players and athletes here in the state of Florida, and all you got to do is develop them and keep them here with a positive attitude. And I think, again, you know, that Coach Mullen has a lot of Coach Spurrier's traits in terms of being a positive thinker all the time and being upbeat, you know, and not being negative and that type of thing. And it's paid off. And he's done a great job. I think he's got a really good staff that he's hired here. And it's a lot of fun watching them play. I tell you, I really enjoy watching them.
You're back coaching high school ball now. The game has changed over the years. You know, I remember when kids would come out of high school, sign a scholarship or whatever, they wanted to be redshirted. Kids nowadays want to play right away. You as a high school coach, how do you kind of present it to these kids when they're being recruited?
Well, first of all, I tell them don't get married to the coaches that's recruiting you, because they're probably not going to be there by the time you graduate. That's just the nature of the business. You know, go to the school that has tradition, that's going to give you an opportunity for you to develop your skills, and that you're going to get a quality education, because those are the things that people can't take away from you. You know, it's not just a 4-year scholarship, it's a 40-year investment for your future, you know. And so it's hard to get kids nowadays to think in a mature manner in that way. But that's what I always tried to get them to do, you know, and I don't know, it's just a different society that we live in now, Shane, as you well know, and a different kind of kid. And quite frankly, it's just about time for me to retire. I've got 2 years left now, and that's my goal, is get 2 years left here, get close to home. You know, when I left college coaching, the whole goal was, look, I've been coaching 35 years. I'm ready now to go back to high school, where I really believe you can make a bigger difference in young guys' lives. Absolutely. At the high school level. And so if I go back to high school and try to make a difference in their lives, get close to the beach and ride off into the sunset, that was kind of the goal.
That's a good plan to have. Last thing for you, Coach, I have all the former players and coaches that coach for the head ball coach. You got to have one story that you can tell on air for us, a good Coach Spurrier story.
Oh, wow. I knew that was coming. That's a hard one, man. That's really a hard one. I would say probably the best stories that stick out in my mind are not really football stories as much as off season, being at the beach or being on the golf course. Coach Spurrier is very, very disgustingly honest, and he's going to do everything by the book, the way it's supposed to be done. So when we're playing golf, there are no gimmies. I mean, it's a 5 to 6 inch putt every time. But one time we're playing out at Heritage Links, we're on number 18, and we're playing in the same group, and I'm way out of the money. You know, hell, I got an 18 handicap, and I hit a ball close to the out of bounds markers over on the right, and it's sitting in between these two white stakes. Well, Coach Spurrier's down on his hands and knees plumbing it out, see if I'm in or out of bounds. You know, and it's like, God, man, it doesn't matter. I'm out of the money, you know, but that's just the way he is. He's perfectly honest about everything, and I love that about him.
Yeah, he's a good dude. Well, Jimmy Ray, you're a good dude as well, my man. Appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Stay safe. Good luck to your team this year, and hopefully we'll see you in Gainesville sometime soon, buddy.
All right. Thanks a lot, Shane. I enjoyed being on with you.
Absolutely. That's Jimmy Ray Stevens, former Gator coach and Gator player here. Join us on the Titan MR hotline. Refresh your vehicle and your brand with a vehicle wrap from Wrap Spot. June is your lucky month at Wrap Spot. Mention promo code Shane and receive 13% off your vehicle wrap. Visit them at wrapspot.com today. We're going to take our last time out of the program. When we come back, we're going to wrap it up. You've been watching and listening to Potto with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
Time out! Time out! Hey! Time out! Time out! Time out! There we go. Good.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills.
Let's give them something to cheer for now.
Our Gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. The Best Restoration, Masters of Disasters. Pound Hurt, your preferred personal injury attorneys. Peachland Dental, Gator fans' first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Celebration Point Town Center, The Digital Mortgage Guy, Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Center State Bank, Gator Bait Media, Davis Gainesville Chevrolet, Miapa Latin Cafe, Gators Dockside, Aikido America Martial Arts and After School,
Doreen Wiebe Realtor, Hallwell Banker MM Parish,
Radware, Wrap Spot,
and Style Cuts.
If you are interested in promoting your business on this show, you can visit our website, potupwithshane.com, and click on the advertise button or call Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
He's looking, still looking. He's going for the end zone. He's got a touchdown.
Welcome back to a Wednesday edition of Pot Up with Matthews and the Bar from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. We want to thank our guest today, Ryan Fowler, out of Tuscaloosa, talking Alabama Crimson Tide football. And then former Gator and former Gator coach, Jimmy Ray Stevens, joining us on the Titan MR hotline as well. This day in sports is brought to you by the Best Restoration. Do you have COVID-19 concerns? Do what everyone is doing and hire the Best Restoration to fully sanitize and sterilize your home or office. Visit their offices this week for a free bottle of hand sanitizer when you mention the code Shane. Call 352-234-8994. This day in sports history, we're going to go all the way back to 1992 in the NBA draft. LSU center Shaquille O'Neal is the first pick of your Orlando Magic. Big Shaq out of LSU. Don't forget, folks, please go to Facebook and follow us. You can like us, but we want you to follow us. Check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts as well. Don't forget, on tomorrow's show, a Thursday edition, this is the one you're going to want to tune in. Aubrey Monroe. She's on the USA softball team, tremendous Gator softball player here. She was voted best catcher, defensive catcher in the history of the NCAA not too long ago. Really excited to have her on the program. Also going to have Brent Beard tomorrow talking college football, what he's hearing out there. Are we going to play this, that, and the other? And then on Friday's program, we're going to have Donnie Young, former offensive lineman on the 96 National Championship team. We just heard Jimmy Ray talking about him as a player. And Shane Durkle-Bolton, big center, going to play basketball here. Now a big developer who's basically developed Celebration Point here in Gainesville. I believe that's going to be it for today's show. I'm trying to think if I left anything out. I don't believe I did. But we got a great lineup for you next week. But wait till that comes out. So today's show is a wrap, brought to you by Wrap Spot. A vehicle wrap from Wrap Spot will give your business years of brand recognition and increased sales. Call Wrap Spot today. Folks, be safe out there. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. Go follow us. You've been watching and listening to Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Take care, folks.